Hello there and welcome back to another review. So today I thought we'd have a look at the sequel to one of my all-time favourite horror movies, and that is The Blair Witch Project. Now, back in 1999, when I saw it for the first time at the cinema, I thought it was amazing, right? I was one of them guys. I was one of these people that would absolutely love the Blair Witch to pieces. It's still one of the best times I've ever had at the cinema. I was absolutely gone. I was just, like I said, a fan right away. Like, I'd never seen anything like it before. I thought it was original, atmospheric, scary. And the movie really did spearhead that whole found footage genre, which went bananas. And really, one could argue for the next decade or so. Movies like Cloverfield, Paranormal Activity, As Above, So Below, there was Creep, there was Willow Creek, there was a whole plethora of found footage movies that come out. There was millions, but the found footage genre had sort of been done before with films like Cannibal Holocaust, including elements of that all the way back in 1980. But either way, it was Blair Witch that really kick-started the whole found footage thing and sort of put it on the map. It was Blair Witch Project that really did sort of get it. This is a whole different genre we can do here. Now, The Blair Witch was such a hit, of course, and the sequel happened with Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, and the less said about that, the better, because that was it was a rush film, and they sort of tried to do the whole film within a film shtick, and you always got the impression with Blair Witch 2, it was like the filmmakers went, oh crap, Blair Witch was actually like absolutely hugely financially successful. It made loads of money. We better get a sequel out as quick as possible, and people just flocking their droves to see it. But we all know about Blair Witch 2. It was pretty bad. It was pretty damn bad. But as I say, just missed the mark completely. But the film here I'm looking at today, made in 2016, simply titled Blair Witch, I think was sort of a way to sort of give it, sort of the fans of the original film, a true sequel that they deserve, that sort of the original, or at least tried to recapture what made the original work. I know the filmmakers of the original, Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick, were interested in making a third movie for ages, but so it was great that the original filmmakers were on board. Originally, like in terms of the planning stage, they did want to get a third film sort of up and running. Adam Wingard, the director of this movie, is the guy that would later go on to direct like Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla Kong the New Empire, plus the Death Note movie, of all things. Now, you may not believe me, but when this film was announced and it was filmed under the working title The Woods, I was going through a Blair Witch phase. It was really odd. It was almost like the time was right. It was, this going to sound really, really weird. But I was watching Blair Witch again, I went through a Blair Witch phase, and I had no idea they were even making a third movie. But it's almost like I somehow knew it's almost like it was something. There was something in the air, like I sort of knew it was coming. Don't ask me what. Like sometimes, I don't know if this is the same for you, but when you like a film that much and you know it beat for beat, and you love it to pieces, you know what's going to happen, and you can watch it time and time again. I go through phases like that with movies sometimes. Like, I can watch, if I love a film so much, I can easily watch it 2 or 3 times in a week. Like, really, really get into it. And Blair Witch Project, the original, was that kind of movie for me. Now, this film is far from perfect. It does start promisingly. Unfortunately, it's the third act of the movies where the wheels come off a bit, and it does sort of tend to fall apart a bit in the third act in places. But to be honest, it was everything I sort of expected it would be. It didn't necessarily blow me away, but it was sort of okay. It sort of feels, I guess, like a Blair Witch movie. And I think as fans, if you are a fan of Blair Witch Project, it's the best really we could have hoped for. It's much like Force Awakens. Let's just stick to our guns, give the fans we know what they want, and play it safe. I mean, unlike the Saw movies or Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, etc., the Blair Witch franchise could have easily had loads and loads and loads of sequels over the years, but in a way that's a good thing, rather than don't get me wrong, I would love to see more Blair Witch movies or a Blair Witch TV show or whatever it may be, because I love the Blair Witch lore, I love the Blair Witch mythology, I love the whole mystery around what the filmmakers, this fictional horror story they come up with. But at the same time, sometimes it's best to just leave as set when a film's and it just becomes its own thing. You don't need to milk it. I'm sure in time there will be some more in some Blair Witch something. I know there's been Blair Witch video games, but sometimes it is just best to leave them as it is. It wasn't milked as so many horror franchises are. And despite the sequel and even this movie, it still makes the original seem very fresh and original. To be back in 1999 again, that's all I can say. And the film, despite its efforts, is nowhere near as memorable as the first movie. And why after this and the Death Note movie, film producers were like, now that's the guy we want for our Godzilla franchise. What is it about directing this and a Death Note movie? Did film producers and like the money men simply go, yeah, that's the guy we want to direct a kaiju movie? Like, why? What on earth? Like, why? You know, it's not like the Death Note movie was particularly good. It's not like even this movie is particularly good. But why sometimes people are hired to direct certain movies? I have no idea, and that I just don't know. So no, the thing is with this movie, no characters in this are even memorable, and the real shame is the characters in this, they're not even that likable, which is a shame. Like, there's too many characters, the scares are a lot less subtle than the first movie, which I think is where the film sort of stumbles the most. I think it tries to show and do too much for a Blair Witch movie. Reviews for the film have been mixed, mostly negative. I never hated the movie, but like I said, I think for Blair Witch sequels, this is really the best we could have hoped for. You know, it's not necessarily really bad, but it's sort of, you know, it'll do. It's one of them kind of movies. You know, you got to remember as well, for a film that was made nearly 20 years prior, of course the scares were going to be more obvious. They were going to show, like, you know, 20 years like from the original, they were going to show more to please an audience who have maybe shorter attention spans. But like I say, it's one of them movies that it is like, yeah, it do. You know, it's all we could have hoped for. They at least tried to pay respect to the legacy of the first movie. But man, I mean, when this was announced, I was hyped. I was so, they're doing another Blair Witch movie. I was so up for it. You know, a proper sequel was happening in terms of originality, atmosphere, and just films that started a whole subgenre. You can't look no further than the original Blair Witch. So this guy James thinks like this footage has been posted online is that of his sister Heather from the first movie, and the guy who uploaded it says it is taken from the Black Hills Woods. So James and his group of friends go to investigate, and we get loads of techno babble talk like memory cards, GPS, drones. I mean, the setup of the younger brother looking for his sister is like the only setup they could have gone for, you know, like a relation, looking for a relation from the first movie. It's the only way they could sort of connected it to the first movie to make it seem like a bit of a follow-on. I don't think it's even mentioned in the first movie that Heather even has a younger brother or anything like that, but that's the setup they go for here, and I think that's really, you know, all they could have done. I wasn't a fan of how they show the end to the first movie as well in this movie. I don't think they needed to do that. I really don't think they needed to do that. So their goal is to find the house that appears at the end of the first movie, which is still one of the scariest things I've ever seen up to that point. So he's going with his best friend Peter, Peter's girlfriend Ashley, and James's girlfriend Lisa. And Peter doesn't want Lisa to use this for this movie she is doing. They stay at this travel lodge, which to me seems like exactly the same room and travel lodge from the first movie. I'm pretty sure it is. I do like as well, what I do like is that they take no time at all in getting there. They explain some of the mythos of the town again, how it was once Blair and now Burkittsville. They go and meet Lane and his girlfriend Talia, and the guy who uploaded the footage. Their condition is like, if they're going into the woods, then they want to come along. And Peter starts like ridiculing them right away. Like I say, when I mentioned the characters in this are not likable, like they're really not likable at all. Like Peter starts ridiculing them right away on their previous ups, like on their up videos they've uploaded. Again, like I say, just not really nice. Like this guy, initially you think like Lane, this guy's trying to help, and like Peter just rips him one, right? Okay. And you don't get invested in any of the characters at all. I think they could have done with taking away maybe 2 or 3 of the characters and just making it just 4 would have done, 3 or 4 would have done. You don't need necessarily a lot of characters to make a film like this work. So I love how when Peter and James walk 10 paces from the car and they say they're hungry, and it's like exactly the same shot of the car from the first movie, which is quite cool. It's still sort of nodding head, tip of the hat to the first movie. What is great here is they do remind you of the Blair Witch lore, like Rustin Parr and Coffin Rock, which is fine, but that's fine. I've got no problem with that, but it's all explained in the first movie, right? It's all explained. We don't need to go over it again. It's just wasting dialogue. It's wasting screen time. People who are watching this movie more than likely had seen the first movie. We don't need to recount every single story about the Blair Witch. So the house they're looking for is Rustin Parr's. Apparently, it's not Rustin Parr's. Sorry, that was like burned down. Peter and James laugh at Lane. Now, I had a problem with this. Like, why is James laughing? right? Why is James like, these people are helping him, he's looking for his missing sister, he should be the one who is the most focused, as this is his journey, it's his expedition, his friends have come along, but no, they just ridicule the guy that's trying to help him out. You know, it's like, I just thought, James, you're meant to be focused on the task at hand here. Right to his face too. You know, they explain all the same stories from the first movie, as I say. Ashley, Peter's girlfriend, gets her leg injured when crossing the stream again. She crosses the stream again, all related to the first movie. Luckily for her, though, James is a paramedic. I do think they should have just stuck with 3 characters, as I say. Typical sequel thing. Bigger, better, not better, but bigger, more characters, you know, just bigger, everything bigger, like scares more obvious, a lot more jump scares, everything like that. What is quite good though is there's not a lot of filler with this film. The film but does waste no time in moving along, and as mentioned, the setup on like the first half of the movie is okay. It's not the first half of the movie. It's not a bad setup, and it's a film that I say I don't like. It's not that great, but I've seen it loads of times, so that might count for something. I don't know. But the first half of the movie is actually pretty good. So they set up and use like drones to find the house, which I guess was like the filmmaker's way of bringing like Blair Witch up to date. It's like, right, we got drones now. You know, we learn about Ellie Kedwood again, how she was accused of witchcraft after children said she had taken blood from them, how they tied her to a tree and couldn't find her body. They could have saved so much time, as I mentioned, just by having this as like, you know, like a text scroll at the opening of the movie. We learned she was put on a makeshift rack, and if you look at the, like, you know, if you look at the witch, then you die. You know, like in the first film, rather than like, it was all in the first movie, it's like rather like subtle, distant noises that you could hear, whether it was like scratching or rocks, or, you know, things like that. Here, there's a lot more pronounced and heavier. Like they think, at first they even think it's a bear. This is how like louder and like the noises are. Now, why do I not hate this movie? Because, like I say, if nothing else, it's got the DNA of the original. Maybe not always used to the best degree, but it's definitely on the same page. Characters are forgettable, but the atmosphere and the setup is fine. And I have to love how Lane is not there suddenly and no one wants to search for him. And James and Talia go. Yes, we get jump scares. We get the voodoo Blair Witch dolls over their tents when they wake up. In the first movie, we didn't see these much until later, but boom, here you go, have some Blair Witch voodoo dolls, which we do seem to see rather quickly. As I say, the film does waste no time. It just like sort of, yeah, here we go. Here's the ending to the first movie. Here's the characters, right, we're in the woods. And like I say, the pacing actually is not too bad. So they get up and the clocks say 2 p.m. when they wake. And I have to love how like James is like, we found something and maybe they will reopen the case. Like when they find the voodoo dolls, it's like, it sticks, James. Like, it sticks. Maybe they'll reopen the case. Yeah, it's just some sticks. Ashley's foot is in pain as they go to leave. You know they ain't leaving. Lisa finds rope in Lane's bag, and it was him and Talia who made the voodoo dolls. So they leave in a huff and get sent packing as they lied, saying they'd been there before, and they never have. So yeah, they were maybe right to ridicule Lane a little bit, because he was basically full of BS with what he was talking about. And what's weird is they put in the odd exposition shot in the movie for some reason, like when it's meant to be found footage, but there isn't like a couple of little exposition shots that they use. So our usual thing, our crew go to leave and find their campsite again after they have walked in a circle. Ashley's leg is getting worse, so they decide to camp again. Peter takes the bandage off Ashley's foot, even though James is like the qualified paramedic, and and the foot is messed up, even the wound is moving. They send the drone up, which has a hissy fit and just like stops working. Peter collects firewood, and like I say, every noise is ramped up. His torch runs out of battery. We have like trees falling over. The Blair Witch in this movie, they try to pick more like a beast rather than sort of like an entity. They try and, I think the whole idea is like, let's make the Blair Witch a bit more tangible, let's make the Blair Witch a bit more bigger and a bit more monstrous and that kind of thing, rather than sort of like in the first movie where you weren't quite sure what it is. In here, I think the filmmakers were like, sort of, we've got to sort of show something, we've got to make the Blair Witch seem like scary, because obviously, like I mentioned, as time goes on, as the years go by, audience perception of films change, people's like attention span becomes a lot smaller, so they have to really sort of sometimes really sort of throw a bit more at you than needed, which is a shame, because that's not necessarily what made the original Blair Witch so good. So, as I say, some predictable, annoying jump scares. James finds Peter's flashlight. Lane and Talia turn back up and say it's been 5 days, even though to our crew it's still the same afternoon to them. The alarm was set for 7 a.m. and still dark, and they find rocks outside and real voodoo dolls this time, only much creepier. One thing I definitely didn't see coming and always forget about is Talia getting snapped in half. Like, she absolutely does get completely snapped in half. Their tent gets lifted in the air. As remember, this is like the Blair Witch on like a bigger budget. They all run off. Ashley performs some self-care on her leg, which is just oozing pus. James and Lisa looking for Ashley at this point. The thing is, with so many characters, none of them get to shine half as much as what Heather does in the first movie. I think Heather in the first movie absolutely steals the show. So Ashley, the girl with the bad leg, remember now, takes it upon herself to climb a tree to recover the drone. She gets knocked down and something drags her away. And I think that's the whole thing, why there's just more characters, just so the body count can be bigger. James calms Lisa down with a magic cheek rub. Just that's all he does. He just sort of just rubs her cheek, and she just sort of calms her down, because like they sort of like each other. And James and Lisa find the house, and all these like glitches they keep experiencing on their head cams do take you out at the moment a bit. I mean, the house in the woods is still creepy, no matter what you say. I still think it's an eerie image, and it would have been so awesome if they had like Heather do like a cameo, or like one of the characters from the first movie make a cameo in this movie. I think that would have made, like, just brought it on home to the first movie. I thought that'd have been quite awesome. And this house is now like a mansion compared to the first film, by the way. And I love, after all this has happened and wanting to find his sister, James is now all F this. Like, James has had enough now, right? He's like, this is getting too scary. So Lisa runs into the house right down to the basement, who meets Lane, who has a full afro going on now, knocks her out and says, you have to do what she tells you. He dumps her down the cellar, and suddenly she is like in a crawl space. It slows the film down a bit. As I say, the setup is fine, and I do like how what they paved into. They acknowledged like the time loop thing. I thought that was quite cool, and unfortunately the filmmakers don't know how to drive it on home for the win with this film. That's the problem. So the last third of the movie, it's a shame. It's almost like they really do not know how to end it. Which is a shame. So she gets like dumped down. So she stabs Lane in the neck, and we sort of see the Blair Witch in like a crab form, which is like a sort of blink and you miss it, which they really didn't need to do. She meets James in the attic, and they both face the corner for James to repeat the same dialogue that we sort of got in the first movie, with the sort of, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault. He only had to say it was my project, and it's basically like the same sort of line, just delivered a lot worse. James gets killed and ends with Lisa turning around and dies too. Now, like I said, I do like how they made a plot about the whole time loop thing, and the time loop, and the thing like the fact the woods are cursed, and the witch in these woods, which a lot of people did sort of predict when the first movie came out. Like, that would explain it. Basically, the witch can manipulate time, and she sort of controls like what happens in the woods. I do like the fact they sort of acknowledged that, hence why they saw like rust in Parr's house and things like that. But as I said, I don't hate it, but it's one of those movies. It's probably, like I mentioned, probably the best we probably will ever get as a sequel, like a good, okayish sequel. It's not great, it's not rubbish, but it's, like I say, it just settles in the middle of sort of, yeah, it'll do. It's one of them kind of movies. But as I say, it's probably the best sort of us Blair Witch fans could have hoped for. Just the characters and the scares, they're just nowhere near as memorable as the first movie. And I think, like I say, the Blair Witch Project, the original, was very much of its time. It was a movie, I say in 1999, you had movies like Phantom Menace, there was like Austin Powers sequel, there was Matrix, there was Wild Wild West, there was all these films. But I think, like I said, Blair Witch Project is a film I remember very fondly. I still love it even now. It's still one of my favourite movies of all time. Just for sheer atmosphere alone, Blair Witch Project, the original, is still one of my favourite movies. And let's say, less said about Blair Witch 2, the better. But this was more of a substantial effort. I think this film, if nothing else, it just respects the original a lot more. So let me know what you thought of 2016 Blair Witch. Did you think it was a good sequel, or did you think, no thanks, I'll stick to the original? Or maybe you just hate the Blair Witch franchise altogether, and that's fine too. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review. See you again soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all that heavenly glory.